Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. The video opens with a moody montage, flickering chandeliers, long-shadowed corridors of the White House at night, and a barely visible silhouette of Abraham Lincoln in an upstairs window. The visuals set an immediate tone of mystery and unease, pulling viewers into a world where history and the supernatural intertwine. Over these haunting images, the narrator's voice cuts through. The White House is a symbol of power, but behind its stately walls lurk secrets, ghostly whispers, and tales too chilling for the history books. This dramatic introduction isn't just meant to thrill. It introduces the viewer to the idea that the White House, often seen solely as a political stage, also serves as the setting for centuries of paranormal lore. It invites the audience to see this iconic residence in a new light, not just as the home of presidents, but as a place where unexplained phenomena, ghost sightings, and chilling accounts have quietly lingered through American history. The stage is set not for a typical historical overview, but for a deeper exploration into the haunted legends and mysterious events that continue to cast a spectral shadow over the most famous house in the nation. The story of the White House begins in 1792, when construction was initiated under President George Washington's direction, although he never lived to see it completed. By 1800, John Adams became the first president to reside in the newly finished executive mansion. From the outset, the White House was more than just a residence. It was a living symbol of the new American Republic, embodying both the aspirations and tensions of a fledgling nation. But over the centuries, the White House became more than a political hub. It became a witness to turmoil, transformation, and trauma. One of the most dramatic episodes occurred in 1814 during the War of 1812, when British troops invaded Washington, D.C. and set the White House ablaze. The charred ruins were later rebuilt, but such destruction left a psychological and symbolic scar on the nation's capital. Then came decades of major renovations and expansions. Walls shifted, rooms changed, and hidden corners were created, all of which added to its eerie complexity. Layered on top of architectural upheaval were the human tragedies that unfolded within its walls. Presidents like William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, and Warren G. Harding died in or near the White House. Abraham Lincoln, though assassinated elsewhere, is said to have carried a heavy spiritual weight during his time in office, especially during the Civil War. Grief, fear, and anxiety saturated the air of the building as it became a place where monumental decisions were made under crushing pressure. Given its age, its history of fire, death, war, and personal sorrow, the White House has become more than just a national landmark. It's a potential magnet for lingering energy and spectral presence. The very stone and timber seem to echo with the footsteps of those who lived, governed, and sometimes suffered within its walls. It's no wonder, then, that tales of hauntings and ghostly encounters have endured, turning the White House into one of America's most haunted historic homes. Perhaps the most famous and persistent ghost said to haunt the White House is that of Abraham Lincoln. His presence has been reported by an astonishing array of credible witnesses, suggesting that the weight of his presidency and the tragic end he met left a spiritual imprint too powerful to fade. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, during a visit to the White House in the 1940s, is said to have heard a knock on her bedroom door. When she opened it, she was met with the ghostly figure of Lincoln, tall and solemn in his recognizable black coat and top hat. She fainted on the spot. Eleanor Roosevelt, though not claiming a direct sighting, admitted to feeling his presence in the Lincoln bedroom while she worked there late at night. Even Winston Churchill, a known skeptic of the paranormal, supposedly encountered Lincoln's ghost while staying in the White House, stepping out of a bath to find Lincoln calmly standing by the fireplace. Churchill reportedly quipped, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage," before retreating, never again sleeping in that room. Another frequently seen spirit is that of Dolly Madison, wife of President James Madison, a strong-willed First Lady remembered for her grace and social influence. When later administrations attempted to remove her beloved rose garden, groundskeepers reported seeing a woman in early 19th century attire watching them with stern disapproval. According to some accounts, tools went missing and work was mysteriously disrupted until plans to disturb the garden were abandoned. Staff and security have also described fleeting glimpses of her figure walking among the blooms, as if still tending to her cherished creation. Then there's Andrew Jackson, whose ghost reportedly manifests more through sound than sight. Loud, boisterous laughter, cursing, and the stomping of heavy boots have been heard from his former bedroom, especially late at night. Jackson was known for his fiery temper and deep involvement in contentious political battles, and some believe the emotional energy he carried still echoes through the walls. Mary Todd Lincoln herself, who held seances in the White House after the death of her son Willie, claimed to have heard Jackson swearing and stomping about. Speaking of Willie Lincoln, his young spirit is also said to linger. After his death, from typhoid fever in 1862, both of his grieving parents reportedly saw and spoke to him, with Mary Todd Lincoln particularly convinced that he remained near. White House staff over the years have claimed to see a boyish figure roaming the halls, often described as quiet, sad, and dressed in mid-19th century clothing. These stories, passed down through presidents, first ladies, foreign dignitaries, and staff, form a rich, eerie tapestry. Whether fact or folklore, the sheer volume and consistency of these ghostly encounters suggest that the White House is not only a house of power, but a place where the past lingers just beneath the surface. Even presidents, men who hold the highest office in the land, have not been immune to the eerie atmosphere that seems to permeate the White House. In fact, some of the most compelling ghost stories come from the presidents and first ladies themselves, offering chilling insights into the strange occurrences behind closed doors. Abraham Lincoln, whose ghost has become the most legendary, reportedly experienced supernatural moments even during his own lifetime. One of the most famous stories involves a vision he had shortly before his assassination in 1865. Lincoln described seeing a double image of himself in a mirror, his normal reflection, alongside a pale, ghostly duplicate. His wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, interpreted this as an omen. The strong image represented his first term, while the faint one signaled his death before the second could be completed. This haunting premonition deeply disturbed the already burdened president and foreshadowed the tragic end to his life just weeks later. Decades later, President Harry Truman also encountered inexplicable phenomena. In personal letters to his wife Bess, Truman wrote about hearing strange noises in the White House at night, rappings at the doors, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, and unexplained knocks. He once wrote, "The floors pop and the drapes move back and forth. I can just imagine old Andy Jackson and Teddy Roosevelt having it out over policies in the next room." Truman was a rational man, but even he admitted that the sounds he heard were uncomfortably convincing and hard to explain. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the strange stories continue. Michelle Obama, during her time as First Lady, shared her own unsettling experiences in interviews. She recalled hearing mysterious sounds in the middle of the night, doors creaking, unexplained footsteps, and dogs barking at seemingly nothing. She even joked about how the family would try to ignore these occurrences, but there was always a feeling that they weren't entirely alone in the historic home. These first-hand accounts, from leaders both past and present, give a powerful legitimacy to the tales of the supernatural in the White House. When even the most powerful figures in the nation have moments of doubt, fear, or fascination with the unexplained, it raises a compelling question. Could there be more truth to the White House hauntings than we'd like to believe? While presidents and first ladies may offer the most public accounts of eerie encounters, it's the White House staff and Secret Service agents, those who spend the most time within its walls, often late at night, who have provided some of the most consistent and spine-chilling testimonies. Over generations, these men and women, sworn to confidentiality and known for their professionalism, have quietly passed down stories that defy rational explanation. Longtime staff members, particularly butlers and ushers who've worked through multiple administrations, have reported sudden cold drafts in sealed rooms, lights flickering on and off without cause, and even the feeling of unseen hands brushing past them. Some have spoken, anonymously or in memoirs, of witnessing shadowy figures moving through hallways, where no one should be. One recurring tale describes the apparition of a tall, bearded man in period dress, widely believed to be Abraham Lincoln, seen in or near the Lincoln bedroom or just outside the Yellow Oval Room. Secret Service agents, known for their training and composure, have also shared unsettling experiences. There are reports of agents stationed near the Truman balcony or on the upper floors hearing phantom footsteps when no one else was around. Others have spoken of alarms going off for no discernible reason or guard dogs reacting violently to empty spaces. In one instance, an agent reportedly saw a figure standing at a window on the second floor long after the first family had retired for the night, only for it to vanish as he approached. What makes these stories especially compelling is their consistency across decades and political administrations. Despite living in an age of surveillance, security systems, and scientific skepticism, these modern-day witnesses often choose not to go public, not out of fear of ridicule, but perhaps because the White House has always been a place where history hangs thick in the air. These quiet testimonies reinforce the idea that the past lingers in more ways than one, and that even in the heart of American power, there are mysteries that no guard or gadget can quite explain. While the White House has never officially sanctioned a full-scale paranormal investigation, understandably so, given its political and symbolic weight, that hasn't stopped ghost hunters, historians, and curious minds from probing its eerie reputation. Paranormal enthusiasts and authors have long been fascinated by the frequency and consistency of ghost stories tied to the executive mansion. Some have attempted to piece together patterns from personal accounts and historical timelines, while others have speculated on what a formal investigation might uncover if allowed behind closed doors. Privately, some ghost hunters have claimed to conduct limited investigations through secondhand interviews with staff or during public tours. Anecdotal reports of electromagnetic field spikes and unexplainable audio phenomena have circulated, though none of it has been verified under controlled conditions. Still, the repeated stories of specific spirits, like Abraham Lincoln or Dolly Madison, give these tales a continuity that's hard to ignore. Historians, on the other hand, often approach the subject with measured curiosity. While most do not endorse the idea of literal hauntings, they acknowledge that the White House is layered with emotional history. Wars declared, assassinations mourned, crises navigated. These moments leave a psychological and symbolic imprint that can explain why so many people, especially those under stress or working odd hours, report intense and sometimes unsettling experiences. Skeptics tend to lean on scientific and psychological explanations. Many of the strange occurrences, creaking floors, cold drafts, flickering lights, can be attributed to the building's age and its evolving architecture, much of which dates back over 2 centuries and has undergone numerous renovations. From an architectural standpoint, the White House is a maze of ducts, hidden staircases, and thick walls that can produce unexpected sounds and air movements. Sleep paralysis is a fascinating and often terrifying phenomenon that offers a psychological explanation for many ghost sightings, particularly those reported at night. It occurs during the transition between sleep and wakefulness, where the mind becomes conscious while the body remains temporarily paralyzed. In this state, people often report sensing an ominous presence, feeling an overwhelming pressure on their chest, or seeing shadowy figures in the room, all classic symptoms that match common ghost encounters. In high-stress environments like the White House, where individuals may experience anxiety, long hours, and emotional strain, the likelihood of such sleep disturbances increases significantly. When the mind is in a heightened emotional or psychological state, especially while resting in a place steeped in intense historical events, like the deaths of presidents, wartime decisions, or national tragedies, it can become a fertile ground for the imagination to bring internal fears and associations to life. The brain, already primed by stories of hauntings or knowledge of past events, may unconsciously generate vivid, hallucinatory experiences that feel utterly real in the moment. The history of the building essentially loads the imagination with imagery and emotion that can manifest during sleep paralysis or moments of solitude. More broadly, the persistence of ghost stories in the White House speaks to how deeply intertwined America's national history is with the myths we tell ourselves. These aren't just tales of bumps in the night. They're expressions of collective memory and identity. The figures people claim to see, like Abraham Lincoln or Dolly Madison, aren't random. They're cultural symbols tied to pivotal moments in U.S. history. When their ghosts are reported, it's as if the past is refusing to stay silent, demanding to be remembered. In that sense, the ghost stories of the White House are less about the supernatural and more about the emotional and historical residue left behind in places of great consequence. The building becomes more than just a residence. It becomes a living archive of the American psyche. So, whether or not one believes in literal spirits, the tales continue because they serve a deeper purpose. They help us process the weight of history and give voice to the past in a way facts alone never can. Ghost stories, especially those rooted in political spaces like the White House, persist not just because of their eerie intrigue, but because of what they symbolize. In a place where power, legacy, and decision-making shape the course of a nation, the idea of lingering spirits suggests that history itself refuses to fade. These tales become more than just supernatural curiosities. They're metaphors for unresolved tensions, national trauma, and the enduring weight of past leadership. When a president's ghost is said to walk the halls, it signals that their influence, or perhaps their burdens, still loom over the country they once led. 9. Symbolic power of ghosts in American history runs deep. Consider the specter of Abraham Lincoln, often seen during times of national crisis. His appearances, whether real or imagined, seem to echo a yearning for moral clarity and leadership during troubled times. These stories reflect more than superstition. They reveal how Americans project hope, fear, and memory onto figures who once embodied the nation's ideals. Ghosts in political spaces function almost like historical conscience, reminders that actions have consequences, and that even in death, legacies are not forgotten. This passage touches on something profound: the power of storytelling to make distant history feel intimate, especially when that history revolves around the presidency, a role often seen as remote, grand, and untouchable. Haunted tales, especially those linked to the White House, strip away the stiff formalities and instead present these historical figures as real, emotional humans. The idea that a president's ghost might walk the corridors at night implies that their duties, decisions, and perhaps regrets still linger in the very place where they once exercised immense authority. It transforms the White House from a symbol of institutional power into a deeply human space, layered with memories and emotions that transcend time. This humanization is important because it creates emotional access points for ordinary people. We may never know what it's like to sign a declaration of war or navigate a national crisis, but we do know what it means to carry emotional weight, to make difficult decisions, or to leave something unfinished. When we hear stories of Lincoln staring out a window or Jackson's ghostly laughter echoing through the halls, it isn't just eerie, it's oddly comforting. It reminds us that even the most powerful figures in American history were, at their core, people with doubts, attachments, and fears. That they, too, might remain connected to their roles even after death suggests how deeply they were shaped by and committed to their country. In this sense, the question of whether the White House is truly haunted almost becomes irrelevant. The true haunting lies in how we, as a society, choose to remember and mythologize our leaders. These ghost stories reflect a collective need to keep the past close, to feel its presence, and to wrestle with the legacies left behind. The spirits are not just literal apparitions, they are metaphors for enduring influence, unresolved history, and the nation's psychological imprint of power and responsibility. The White House becomes more than a seat of government. It becomes a stage where the past and present continuously overlap. This passage beautifully captures how ghost stories, despite their supernatural nature, serve as vehicles for something much deeper: the human need to understand and connect with the past. In many ways, these tales do what history books cannot: provide an emotional, visceral connection to figures and events that might otherwise feel distant or abstract. While textbooks focus on facts, dates, and events, ghost stories provide a framework for interpreting those same events through the lens of emotion, personal experience, and mystery. At their core, these ghostly tales remind us that history is not just a series of facts to be memorized, but a collection of human stories filled with emotions, decisions, and consequences. When we hear about the ghost of Abraham Lincoln walking the halls of the White House, we are not just hearing a story about a man who lived in the 19th century. We are invited to feel his presence, to empathize with the weight of his decisions, and to reflect on the toll they took on him, both during his life and, if we believe in the haunting, after his death. These ghost stories, whether true or fabricated, create emotional access points into history that allow us to engage with the struggles, triumphs, and tragedies of those who shaped our nation. Moreover, these stories often allow us to question and explore history from new angles. They challenge us to think about how we remember and interpret the past, what gets immortalized in official narratives, and what gets lost to time. Ghosts, as symbols of unfinished business or unresolved histories, offer a window into the parts of the past that continue to linger, sometimes unnoticed, beneath the surface of official history. The phrase "alive with memory" underscores the idea that the White House, as a physical and symbolic space, holds within it more than just the echoes of policies and political decisions. It contains the emotional, personal, and, in some beliefs, spiritual residues of those who have walked through it. This living memory is constantly reactivated by the stories we tell about the place and the people who shaped it. In this way, ghost stories are not just about spirits or hauntings, they're about the endurance of memory, the emotional ties that bind us to the past, and the ways in which we ensure that the legacies of history remain relevant and alive in our collective consciousness. The White House, in all its grandeur, becomes not just the seat of power, but a place where history continues to resonate, echoing through time in both literal and metaphorical ways. This approach allows viewers to see the White House not just as a historic building, but as a symbol of the ongoing conversation between past and present. The ghosts, whether real or imagined, are reminders that history is not static, but constantly evolving, rooted in the shared experiences of a nation that continues to reflect on its identity and legacy. The White House, as a symbol of democracy and power, stands at the heart of American history, but its shadowy corners tell a different story, one filled with whispers from the past. The haunting tales of Abraham Lincoln's spirit, the restless presence of Andrew Jackson, and the other spectral figures that reportedly linger in its halls are not just ghost stories. They are threads in the fabric of the nation's collective memory. Whether you believe in the supernatural or see them as mere folklore, these stories humanize the history that surrounds us, bringing us closer to the people who shaped our country. As we've explored today, the idea of the White House being haunted may be more than just a story. It's a reflection of how we remember and connect with our past. So what do you think? Is the White House truly haunted, or are these just tales passed down through the ages? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Which ghost story chilled you the most? Do you think there's truth to these eerie reports, or are they just a part of the rich legend surrounding America's most iconic building? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating history and mysteries.